Brett Brown joins us from Sydney. Brett, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on board. Now tell us about Unexpected News.
Well, it's a beautiful piece for baritone and chamber orchestra, which has been commissioned by the Amiga Ensemble, one of Australia's finest chamber groups, in loving memory and celebration, as you rightly said, of Stephen Allwood, who was a patron of the arts and a champion of ethical journalism here in Australia.
Stephen Allwood, as we mentioned, very close to many of us here at ABC News. He was one of my, I guess, mentors as a young journalist. He died shortly before he was set to be married with another colleague of mine, Mark Wakely, who commissioned this piece. And it really would have, it certainly is going to do Stephen proud.
I think it will. It's an incredible piece of music, and it's the first time that one of the world's greatest living composers, Nico Muhly, has had a world premiere here in Australia. In fact, it's his first Australian commission.
Okay, Nico has quite a reputation. In fact, you, Brett, have been a long-time fan of Nico's work.
I have. When I was still an acting student in London, I first heard his music in the Kate Winslet film The Reader, and she won the Academy Award the next year for that. And Nico, at this stage, was on track to become the youngest composer ever to be commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera in New York.
All of this is initially based, Unexpected News, on a poem by a pretty well-known Greek author from last century. Tell us a bit about that, Brett.
That's right. It's the poet Constantine Cavafy, and he wrote this poem in 1927. The poem itself is called Two Young Men Aged 23 or 24, and we've taken the title Unexpected News, which is a key phrase in the poem itself. But Cavafy was writing this poem at a time when homosexuality was illegal, and there was a backdrop of fear and repression through which he wrote this incredible story about these two young men who were in love.
And it is of particular resonance for Mark Wakely, as I mentioned, who commissioned this piece. We can show you a photo now of Mark and Stephen Allwood. Stephen there on the left, may he rest in peace. Really, there's been a fair bit of work going into this, and I suppose it's special because depictions of gay love are pretty rare, aren't they, Brett, in classical music?
Look, that's absolutely right, and that's partly because the canon of classical music is a product of the society in which it was created, but now, with the changing times, we're seeing greater representation, not only of gay love stories, but of all sorts of stories that have been on the margins of the classical music world for centuries.
Now, you're performing this tonight. A lot of Australians wouldn't know of you, given that you do a lot of your work in Europe. In fact, Brett, you're one of the few Australians to graduate from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, which is quite an achievement.
Thank you, that's correct. Yeah, in 2009 I graduated from RADA, and since that time I've been performing predominantly in London on the stage and on the screen, and giving lots of recitals. And then a lot of my work takes place around Europe as well, and in the last 3 years I've been performing a solo production of Shakespeare's Henry V that has toured throughout Europe. Okay, well listen, we wish you all the best tonight. I'm sure you'll kick it out of the park. Thank you very much, Michael. Great to speak with you. Brett Brown and Unexpected News at the City Recital Centre in Sydney tonight.
Yeah, beautiful venue for such a lovely performance too.